full-blown apocalyptic visions of the seventh ring of hell. What the fuck is going on? And this film delivers that. All right, so let's get into the film class portion of the film class. So you just watched Smile, and obviously it was scary, right? It was a scary movie. I think that movie does so many things well, and they were things that I kind of mentioned as we were watching the movie. You know, I think that jump scares aren't a total no-go for me. I think, unfortunately, the reason that a lot of people have a visceral reaction to jump scares is that they've been very overused in modern horror. We've gotten to a point where we kind of resent them. They almost feel cheap. The use of jump scares in this film in particular isn't gratuitous, and I think it's well done. I think that there are a lot of jump scares in that film in particular that I'm like, okay, that's earned, right? I really like the one where her sister comes up to the car and her head kind of falls into frame. Unfortunately, when the movie came out, I think the producers and the studio liked that scare quite a bit as well, because they used it in the trailer. I think ultimately they kind of cucked their scare for a lot of people that saw that movie in theaters, because that was one of the scares that they used in the trailer. But obviously, I think this film had a lot of really great promotional material that ended up, you know, powering the film in the box office and making it so that it had a lot of success. I think Smile is a film that a lot of people avoided because they were worried that they were going to get a really generic horror experience out of the film, as a lot of like high budget recent Blumhouse films have been. And Smile ends up being less of kind of a cop-out and more of an homage. While I admit that there are a lot of other horror films kind of sampled and twisted and reused in Smile, again, I noticed some people in the chat kind of having a visceral reaction to the film early on and bad-mouthing it. And I think that's because they do expect that this is just kind of like a soulless Blumhouse film. And unfortunately, I think Blumhouse is the reason for that. I think Blumhouse had a lot of early success, but then realized that they could make these like $4 million trash horrors that really like don't have any soul or budget or direction, and they could just tack together directors of the project. What's Blumhouse? Blumhouse is one of the most prolific producers of film today. I would say of the last 10 horror movies you've seen, probably 5 of them are Blumhouse movies. They make movies at an absolute lightning clip, including all of these: Vengeance, The Deep House, Insidious, Black Klansman, Glass, Insidious, Sinister, The Visit, Ma, Split, Lie. They are a absolute like insane pump house for horror. They pump out horror at it. Here's some more: Happy Death Day, Freaky, Totally Killer, Halloween Kills, Insidious, The Red Door, Upgrade, House in the Bayou, The Veil, Us, Creep. They pump shit out. Here are a lot of their most recent films: Black Christmas. And ultimately, what I will say is that Blumhouse has made some good films, but they also have made like some pretty shitty films. That's kind of their model, is that they just pump out movies. In particular, they did a series of films for Hulu: Good Boy, New Year, New You, The Vigil, Puka, All That We Destroyed, Dashcam, School Spirit, The Body, Best Night Ever. So these were all released within like a year, and ultimately they weren't all bad, but a lot of them were just kind of like No soul. In the last like 10 years, they've really saturated the market. If you look at the Blumhouse budgets, look, you can even look it up. The majority of their films are for around 3 to 5, and now that's grown a little bit from 8 to 9. But they essentially make like micro budget horror, and they turn them out very fast. Now, I obviously have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder because our film was bought by Blumhouse and never made. But I do think that beyond my own personal bias, there has kind of been a conditioning of the marketplace that a lot of people kind of expect these $5 to $10 million horror films that they go in and they're like, well, that was whatever. And I think Smile looks like one of those films to an outside observer. And it isn't until you get into the movie that there is this kind of like rich, deeper quality to it. One thing I will say about this movie that's really great is beyond kind of the very surface level horror that plays very well, just like It Follows, it also kind of has a deeper meaning in like cycles of violence. I don't think it's as deep as in It Follows. I think It Follows has some of the most profound latent commentary I've seen in a horror movie since like Get Out. But it's there. And, you know, there is something to be said about movies that are just good. I don't think this movie is a 10 out of 10. I don't think this movie is a 9 out of 10, but an 8 out of 10, absolutely. And it's unique IP. It's a new director. It didn't look and feel like a bunch of other movies. I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? I don't think it's even an 8.1 or an 8.2. Could be a 7.9, could be a 7.8, but there's a lot about this movie that I really enjoy. I think the sound design is tremendous. I think a lot of the scares are very fun. I think one thing that this film does better than almost any horror film I've ever seen is isolate the main characters from their like support system. I love that her boyfriend and her therapist and her sister and her brother-in-law are all fucking shitheads who you fucking hate. There's something very real about that in someone who's like suffered from mental illness, where sometimes the people around you just fucking hate them. And that was real. That came off. I didn't dislike that. I also think the violence in this film isn't overdone. It's not like a Terrifier where you're just like, oh God, but the violence is good. You know, there's a lot of unique little kills and moments in there that are scary. And ultimately, I think one thing about horror movies like this is you have to stick the dismount. And I said earlier on that I thought this film, I liked the ending. Some people won't like the ending because obviously Rose dies and it's, you know, sad horror ending and people don't like that. But I think one thing it does really well is in horror movies, you have to escalate. In order for a horror movie to feel rewarding, you have to escalate from your first scare to your last scare, right? Your first scare can be like a jump scare, and then it should be kind of cerebral and latent. And at the end, you want it to be full-blown apocalyptic visions of the seventh ring of hell. What the fuck is going on? And this film delivers that, right? Like there's movies like The Lake House that kind of fail to deliver on that last 10 minutes. But the last 10 minutes of this movie are fucking nuts. I think the creature looks good. I think it ripping off its face is good and sticking its fucking grimy fingers in its in her mouth is great. And ultimately, I like that final 10 minutes of just like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. There's another movie that it reminds me of, the Taking of Deborah Logan. The last 10 minutes of The Taking of Deborah Logan are fucking just wild, insane, batshit fuckery. And I think that they're classically, you get this image from The Taking of Deborah Logan. Let me see if I can pull it up. This is like a classic still frame from The Taking of Deborah Logan, like those vor shots. And I love that it just goes there, right? It takes that one extra step that like, oh fuck, this is happening. This is really going to that next place, and we are going to get a truly fucked up moment out of the end of this film. Someone else in chat said that, what if the boyfriend showed up at the end instead of the ex? I mean, the boyfriend clearly just wanted to get out of that relationship, so I don't know if it would have made sense. I think ultimately he wanted to set up the detective as the main character for the next movie, which I don't mind at all. I think he's a great actor. How did you feel about the ending in a thematic sense? The scare was amazing, but I don't understand what it was trying to say about trauma in a general sense. I don't think it was trying to say anything about trauma at that point. I think it's okay for it to have a plot ending in a horror movie. I think she lost the battle. I think so there are movies where the commentary is the primary focus of the film and the story comes second. I think this is the opposite. I think this is a story first, commentary second film. And so I think the ending was very plot. Like the monster got her, it passed on. And in the next film, we'll see how the next person in the chain fares against this evil spirit with a little bit more lore flushed out, maybe some origin story. And I don't mind that terribly. I want an explanation for the curse. Is it some ancient demon from Brazil? They mentioned that. I think the backstory, they didn't give you too much of it. Maybe that's something that they will develop in a subsequent project. I think ultimately, if you give too much lore, it can get too flushed out and seem hokey. I think what they gave with the scene of the guy in the prison who had kind of figured out how to break the chain, I thought that was like enough of a lore drop that it was satisfying to me. So yeah, the monster design from Smile looks straight from Silent Hill 1 or 2, Will Neff. I can see that, yeah. Would you prefer monster origins / lore in the first movie or in the sequel? It depends on how it's done. If it's done poorly, I don't want it at all.